Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, we appreciate your time. You know how we do it here. We don't keep you hostage. We don't waste your time because we know your time is important. Today, I want to talk on why the United States of America might have abused its economic power, and that has become problematic in the global perspective. China is one of those countries that currently has called the United States of America's bluff. And why am I saying that? Because China all of a sudden became one of those countries that will stand up to the United States irrespective of the particular tariff war that we are seeing.
This morning, the trade war between the world's two biggest economies heating up. China slapping a new tariff on the United States, raising the tax on American goods to 125%. With China one of the main importers of U.S. goods, that move is likely to affect American farmers and companies.
The continent of Africa is observing the United States of America's approach and behavior from an angle of skepticism, and China stood up to the United States in regards to this particular tariff. This problem is between two countries that one perceived to being cheated and the other seems to not allow any bullying anymore. China on the one hand, the United States on the other hand. And by the United States of America previously carrying the tariffs to its particular percentage, and China responding, and the United States of America jagging up to the percentage that we know at the moment, and China carrying up to 125, is to tell the US that you cannot be it all, you cannot gain it all, you do not have absolute control over the world's economy.
And China's President Xi Jinping is now responding to President Trump for the first time, saying that China does not fear economic suppression, but adding there are no winners in a tariff war. It comes after the White House clarified it had raised tariffs on China to 145%.
What the United States of America administration failed to understand at the moment is that the world has changed, that BRICS countries, other economies are important. The United States of America, according to China, that we are not afraid. We are not afraid to take this to whatever extent that it's going to go to. However, China said we don't want to push this to an unending particular trade war because nobody's going to win. And experts and economists around the world have said nobody's going to win. But China have called the United States of America's behavior as a joke.
And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries.
The U.S. tariff policies for the rest of the world remain uncertain. The president keeping a 10% baseline tax in place, even as he paused higher tariffs on dozens of trading partners. President Trump saying he's punishing countries who he insists treat the U.S. unfairly in trade. But experts warn many of those costs will be passed on to American consumers.
So that the United States started all these particular issues. Make no error. The United States has a right to figure out how it's going to make certain percentages amongst if it considers being cheated in global trade. However, the unilateral approach that the United States has carried out and to slap tariffs to countries and then go back and increase it again and now trying to pause, it's causing commotion, it's causing uncertainty in global markets as we see markets tumble in different capitals around the world. It's to show that the United States failed to understand that it's not the single most powerful nation at the moment economically. Of course, the US is a very important market. The dollar and everything that the US does so far, it's a major market for most countries around the world. However, China has also proven that we are the economic manufacturing capital of the world. The United States of America imports more from the country of China than China does. So the notion that United States consumers will not feel the pain I think that is that's not true.
According to a new estimate, all the tariffs could end up costing American households an extra $4,700 in purchasing power. The president acknowledging there will be short-term economic pain.
There'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
We've seen U.S. farmers come out, those producing soya beans, crying that it's going to be tough, that China is their largest market. According to news figures, billions of US dollars being imported last year. And at the moment, China can still look for markets in other parts around the world. So the US is not so unique in terms of its economic perception. China now has a lot of economic experts were complaining that China has grown. China has become so valuable, so important. China has become economically strong, powerful. I think China just proved to the United States now that we are actually really powerful in a way. We've seen the United States of America's advisors like Elon Musk feeling the pinch as they see their world drop to a certain percentage, and the impact cannot be ignored. So this notion that we hear people like Peter Navarro at the White House, Trump's economic policy advisors, talking about that Elon Musk does not understand that he's a car guy, and the other person is saying that the White House advisor lacks some kind of strategic thinking. It goes a long way to remind the United States of America that China is a valuable player, and China has called the United States bluff. The US may have overstretched itself thinking that it has the overall decision making. It can call out countries the way it wants to, like the country of Lesotho previously had 50%, and South Africa previously had 31%. And we've seen the saying that they're going to put in a baseline on 10%, and people were jubilating. How can you jubilate? Do you trust the US president's decision at the moment? Because we've seen capital leaving the United States.
Amazon CEO telling CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin it will likely lead to higher prices.
I think we'll have to see how it all plays out. But if you made me guess, I'm guessing that that sellers will pass that cost on.
This morning, Wall Street is set to wrap up one of the most volatile weeks in the stock market's history. The Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all plunging again on Thursday, erasing part of the historic recovery just 24 hours earlier. The president downplaying the sell-off.
We're very, very happy with the way the country's running.
And it goes back to all global partners. And geopolitics is a terrible game, like I've always said. And the United States of America has proven to an extent that it might not be a reliable partner in several ways. We've seen capital leaving the United States of America, markets tumbling, and African feeling the pinch. European partners are complaining. They don't know where the United States of America stands at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty. So the United States of America has single-handedly, Mr. Trump, brought down the global economy to where it is today. And we are just beginning to see what this impact will be. This is just the beginning. So the US does not have that particular leverage that it had. We saw how this started since in South Africa. South Africa is doing some bad things. Marco Rubio refused to attend the G20 of meeting foreign heads of foreign affairs, say foreign ministers meeting, and Donald Trump peddling the inconsistency in the country of South Africa. And South Africa has stood its grounds against the United States of America. So from South Africa, we've seen things turn around to tariffs, to D-Day, or to the Liberation Day, whatever you call it. That hasn't gone well. We've seen Mr. Trump sitting on his own hands now. He cannot determine, according to all experts say, by you levying tariff to certain percentages, you cannot determine how the market will react, how the global economy will react.
China says its new 125% tariff is set to go into effect on American goods tomorrow. And the market's euphoria, Willie, earlier this week that the president might be backing away from this trade war certainly appears to have been premature. J.P. Morgan Chase making clear that it is not changing its prediction that the U.S. will plunge into a recession as a result of President Trump's policies, blaming what it calls the largest tax hike since World War II.
So we are seeing the U.S. losing that soft power that it has. It has lost its soft power in the continent of Africa because African countries at the moment are very skeptical with regards to how the U.S. perceives its global standing and its strategic engagement. That's why we saw the president, the former president of South Africa, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, talk about that the United States of America must go back to the drawing board and note that the multipolar world order is here to stay. And Mr. Trump still lives, I don't know where is he thinking that the US have that much leverage to an extent. And China, despite China saying that we're not going to increase this particular levy of 125% to that the US behavior is a joke, I think that's just a way to call out the United States of America's behavior in terms of this particular trade war. So China is saying that I'm not going to go further. I will leave it this way it is. But if you feel the United States that you want to take it to whatever extent, we are not afraid. These are the words coming from Beijing. We are not afraid. We can stand our grounds, whatever it takes, that China will not be bullied.
All right, Fareed Zachariah is out front now, the host of Fareed Zachariah GPS. So Fareed, while Will was reporting, and Will and I on this show together so many times, and most of his reports go to bars and tone in China. Most of the time they censor them. They did not censor this. A report about a potential invasion of Taiwan, beginning with a U.S. general saying that they are not practicing, that they are literally rehearsing, that these aren't drills. And they don't censor it. What is really at stake here tonight?
These are the highest stakes, and the Trump administration has badly bungled this. The greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which would send, seismic ripples through the world economy, through the international political system, the greatest deterrent was not any weapon we had. It was the fear that China had that they would be decoupled from the American economy, the economy with which they had for the last 40 years built a deep interdependent relationship. Trump has fired that gun pointlessly, without a plan, without a strategy. As far as I can tell, the tariffs on China were raised to 145% simply because he wanted to save face. He was backtracking and flip-flopping on all the other tariffs, so he needed to turn China into his punching bag. But because of that, what he has done is play into China's hardliners' hands. They have been waiting for this decoupling. They practiced it during COVID. They practiced it during the Shanghai lockdown. And now what they're going to say is, look, if we go into Taiwan, what do we have to lose? We've already been cut off from the American market.
So the United States consumers will be the one to pay the price. They know this and they begin to feel the pinch. And we've seen businesses, Apple, other major manufacturing organizations that bring their raw materials and parts from China. They know what the impact will be. They understand what will happen if things are not being addressed. So Mr. Trump calling a pause for 30 days, I think that shows weakness to an extent. And I think that the United States might not follow through because by China standing its ground, I'm just wondering how this is going to play in the global economy, as we've seen the market bleeding in the past couple of weeks, and we are seeing what's going to happen coming next week, and it shows that the United States of America's strategy to have that leverage that Mr. Trump is talking about all the time, it's not what is going to happen. So I wonder how Europe, to an extent, that needs to talk to 27, talking about European Union here, needs to talk to 27 members and to see how they can respond to the United States. But China is not Europe. China is not Europe, and China is not backing down. China is not going to take that, according to some experts, a nonsensical approach. It's a shameful way to escalation. According to experts, nobody's going to win with regards to this particular trade war. Mr. Trump has single-handedly crumbled the global economy. And this is not to say that the U.S. is not an important economy, but if you use your power, you abuse your economic potential and your purchasing power to reflect something else, again, the United States have the right to adjust the trade tariffs with countries from around the world. But again, there are other ways to do this.
I mean, it is stunning to consider that this may be where this goes. You talk about the path from tariffs to war, a precipitous one. You know, in China, I want to just show this. Will Ripley, showed that post that the foreign ministry recently posted on X. So this post, Fareed, has now 13 million views. So what it's of is the former leader Mao Zedong speaking during the Korean War era. Now, that is the last time, the Korean War, when China and America were actually at physical war, clashing on a battlefield, right? That's being posted now. And he says, in part, Mao, no matter how long this war lasts, we will never yield. And that is trending now in China. I know this feeds into what you're talking about, but the symbolism here is so culturally significant.
The beginning of China's modern history that every school child is taught in history books is that China was forced and humiliated by Western powers, including the United States, in the 19th century, and had to back down and had to accept humiliation and a kind of neo-colonial arrangement with the foreign powers. And the message of Chinese history is never yield like that again. We will never allow ourselves to be put in a position like that. Look, and the Chinese have a fairly strong hand. A lot of the things the United States imports from China, precursors to chemical, pharmacy, drugs, chemicals, minerals. These are all core things. Computer chips. I think I saw one number that said 60% of the chips we import are Chinese chips. We need that stuff. It's not going to be easy to find it somewhere else. You can't find rare earth all over the world. The Chinese, on the other hand, a lot of what they get from us, agriculture, soybeans, things like that, they can get from elsewhere. And most importantly, don't forget, China is a dictatorship. Xi Jinping doesn't have to worry about public opinion in quite the same way that Donald Trump has to worry about it.
Mr. Trump, according to other experts, should have come out and warn countries that I may put it to this particular percentage. If you do not act, if you do not come to negotiate. We've seen the U.S. say that several countries have come to the United States to talk on particular trade discussions to see how they can negotiate. We've seen the White House come out to talk on this particular thing that other countries are calling the United States. They are talking at the moment, trying to renegotiate the particular percentages. Well, we will see how that plays out, because we're known with the Trump administration is that they can say something today and tomorrow they turn out to say something else. So let's wait and see who else is negotiating. And all these leverage discussions using languages that are going to kind of let people or create even more uncertainty. It is the problem that we are. So going back to how China has cooled out the United States of America, because China understands its strategic importance. China will be considered, according to most experts, as the manufacturing hub, manufacturing capital of the world. Chinese products have gained steam. China can also get closer to Europe. If you observe the meeting that the Chinese President, Mr. Xi Jinping, and the Prime Minister from the country of Spain had recently, then you understand how these countries work. That Europe, to an extent, has come to the realization that the United States of America might not be a very strategic partner as we all have thought. So it is important to know that the United States of America might have overstretched itself, might used its power economically, and might have shot itself on the leg.
No, you also just came out with an op-ed, Fareed, and you talk about the tariffs. And in this, you write about your own context on it, growing up in India, a country obviously riddled with tariffs, and where, I mean, no business could survive of any size. It was all about what kind of government handout you were getting or who, you were. It was corruption. You go on to say, when I got to America, I was thrilled to see that most businesses went about their work with little care as to who was in the White House. But now I watch tech pioneers give interviews slavishly extolling Trump's genius, and Wall Street titans race to post North Korea-style congratulations to the president for his brilliance in rescuing the economy from his own actions. And I wonder, what country am I living in? How significant is this moment for you, Fareed, as you see this?
It's a very sad moment, honestly, because to me, as a kid coming to America, America was the city on the hill, the shining example of how a modern economy should work. You have a market, you have rules, you have laws, everybody plays by them. It doesn't matter whether you know the prime minister, the president, a senator. That wasn't important. What was important was the merit. Did you have a good product? Could you sell it to people? And now when you look at the orgy of corruption that is going to be unleashed, we have studies already from the first Trump term. Firms that gave money to Republicans got more exemptions than firms that gave money to Democrats. Already you have Vietnam saying we're gonna expedite the Trump organization's project. Real estate projects are being signed in 19 countries with the Trump organization right now. Yep. All of it says to you that this is an economy where political favor, knowing people, all that has become the key, not the market, which was the glory of the American economy.
Again, so this is important to know that European partners are considering looking at the continent of Africa, looking how they can strike deals. China may be one of those countries that may take leadership in this space, as we all are saying. And what I can say also is that the United States has single-handedly pushed African countries to China, despite that China was very involved in the Belt and Road Initiative across the continent of Africa. But it has demonstrated that China will tell other countries that we told you that the United States is very unreliable. They cannot say what they say they're going to do. So the next 4 years will be that of uncertainty, and African countries must pay attention on what's going on in the global economy, because any move, any particular move, not just talking about that Mr. Trump came in and cut off all aid to the continent of Africa, that's okay. African governments and officials too must sit up and figure out how they're going to plan their particular survival strategies. And Europe also understand the percentages. If Europe and the entire European Union has 20%, and a single country like Lesotho has had 50% previously, and more importantly, other very important economies around the world, they will begin to assess their relationship with the United States of America. And the U.S. under Mr. Donald Trump has proven that it's very, very unreliable. No matter how you want to sugarcoat it, the U.S. has proven that it's a lot of uncertainty that's in the global economy now. If the pandemic never taught Africa anything, if the Russian-Ukrainian war never taught Africans anything, I think this particular move should wake up the continent of Africa, because one of the most important trading agreements that the United States of America had with the continent of Africa, which is called AGOA, which stands for the African Growth and Opportunity Act, is under question at the moment. Nobody knows what is going to happen with AGOA, because we are dealing with an administration that is very unclear in its communication strategy. So African countries are very concerned with regards to this particular administration and it moves, economic moves, so to point out, with regards to the African continent. So the African Growth and Opportunity Act, like I said, it's on life support at the moment, and no country in the continent of Africa should have 100% believe that AGOA may survive September of this year. So Africa must approach this very skeptical in terms of its engagement with the United States of America. So that's the reason why China, a major economic powerhouse, which is a friend of global South countries and a friend of South Africa, a huge investor in the continent of Africa, invested in infrastructure, bridges, airport, road, dams, all of these very important infrastructural things that Africans need. And the United States of America still fumbling in terms of its engagement in the Lobito Corridor project, a very important trade route which is vital for other countries like Angola and more Democratic Republic of the Congo and some other very important strategic partner like Zambia. So all of these countries question the United States of America's resolve at this particular time. So China standing up to the United States of America sends a strong signal across global South countries, and that to an extent, for the first time, we've seen a country that stood up to the United States of America, and this is going to go down in history. So the European Union is the one that is messing up. Europe is very, very divided. Like Mr. Jeffrey Sachs once said, that Europe is just following the United States very blindly behind, and they cannot single-handedly come up with a coherent strategy to stand up to the United States of America. So this is a terrible time in the global economy and in the geopolitical strategical time. I should put it that way. So China telling the United States of America or calling Mr. Trump bluff has left Mr. Trump or the United States of America at this very tight corner at this time. So it is vital to know that the U.S. may have overstretched itself, the U.S. may have overestimated itself, the U.S. may have overabused its own economic power, and that goes a long way to remind other countries that it is time to diversify your trade, especially in the continent of Africa. It is time to diversify your partners. It is about time to start looking for other alternatives, because the United States of America, to an extent, might not be that particular market that you were hoping for the past century. So these are strategic times in the global economy, and African countries must pay attention very closely on what's happening in Washington. So the government in China has realized that the United States of America or sense some vulnerability in terms of US's particular strategic position considering these particular tariffs, and more importantly, China's position as a manufacturing hub in the global economy has come to relevance now that we all are seeing. And this is important for the African continent to know that the continent of Africa must start looking inward and see how it can build its own industries and build strategic partnership within its own borders, break down the borders, open doors, and make sure that the continent of Africa must trade among itself. Of course, open doors for trade with European fringe powers that are ready to work in tandem together with the continent. But more importantly, China has demonstrated that it's a partner to be reckoned with, and the United States of America has so more doubts, and the US has refused to accept that there's a multipolar world at the moment. Hopefully we see how the next week will play on how the global economy will be moving, or what's going to happen next. I don't know. But more importantly, we will see what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks and what Mr. Trump will do, suspending things to 90 days. I think that's not going to change anything. But more importantly, China has demonstrated that it is a force to be reckoned with, and the U.S. consumer will be the ones to pay the price, as the farmers are crying so far. So African countries to diversify and look for other strategic options at the moment. Hopefully that there will be a particular negotiation and discussions with the country of China, and so we all can see this be resolved. But again, we are still not out of the wood yet. So I will be looking forward to seeing what happens. Drop me a comment and let me know if the United States of America overstretched itself and overestimated itself, and why China has called the United States bluff to an extent. For now, we'll be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.